we're still streaming, and one of the things that normally happens in these cities is some of the people that had to leave early. I'm glad you guys didn't. Thank you for staying. They do watch the stream. It's way better to be in person, especially because we're going to have prizes after this panel. And if you leave, if they left, they're not going to qualify for the prizes. So the odds get better at the end of the day for those that filled it out. Okay, we have our honorees, and as I said, and I know that a lot of the honorees left because I don't see a lot of yellow lanyards, but the ones that are here, we're going to acknowledge them, and excuse me, I'll apologize ahead of time because I am the worst person on names, but I'm going to try my best. So my first honoree, and again, our honorees, we've been doing our honorees, it's probably like the 4th year in a row, and when you fill out evaluations, we take your suggestions on that. We also look at LinkedIn, and we can see people that are doing great things in the industry. We also pull our database, and there's just several ways that we come up with our honorees, but your name was submitted, and again, we feel like you're all honorees in our eyes because you're in such a great industry, and we could not be safe without all of our cyber practitioners here, so thank you all to your hard work. So how about a round of applause for yourselves? We've clapped for everyone else today but you guys. So, okay, so let's start. I have Chaya Meka. Chaya Meka is the IT risk manager at Zion Bank Corp. Are you here? Chaya Meka. Chia, come on up, and we have a little certificate and a token of our appreciation in there, and sorry I messed your name up, and congratulations, and I love seeing, I sit on the WiCyS board, and it's always good to see our women growing a little bit each year, so thank you for, oops, don't lose that. All right, next I have Brady Barrett. He's an information security manager from American Express. Brady, are you still here? See, some of our honorees are so important they can't even stay all day. Kelsey Casson is an internal audit manager for Extra Space Storage. Kelsey, are you in the room? Come on up. All right. Congratulations, Kelsey. I have another woman, Rachel Crow, IT director from EH Support. Rachel, are you still here? Rachel Crow, come on up. Congratulations. Now, I'm always looking for women to join our panels, join our speakers. It is the hardest part of my job, is finding women. So, guys, if you have anyone, I never want to leave the men out because we appreciate you guys too, but I've been doing this 20 plus years, and it used to be maybe 2% of women. Now we might be up to 20, so always looking for speakers. And I have a podcast, always looking for people on my podcast, so reach out to me on LinkedIn. All right, Nick Dabish is the IT manager for Peterson Plumbing Supplies. Nick, are you here? It's Peterson Plumbing Supply. All right, looks like Nick's not here. Colin Fear is the CIO of Continental Bank. Come on up. Colin, congratulations. And I know one of my speakers today asked, how many CISOs are in the room? And I think one raised their hand. I see the attendee list. I know there's more than one CISO in here, so thanks for spending the day with us. Mark Mitchell is the director of IT from Prime Insurance Service. Mark, are you here still? Okay. Isaiah Peterson is a senior information security analyst from Intermountain Healthcare. Isaiah, come on up. Congratulations. Next, I have Rena Shipley, is an information security officer from Salt Lake County. Come on up, Rena. Congratulations, Rena. We have David Williams, the director of IT from US Foods. David, come on up. Usually I have someone up here helping me, so sorry about that. Is there anybody else that's out there, because I'm going to introduce my panel now that I forgot that you came in late. Okay. Chris Ducker is sitting on our panel today, and he's the Deputy Chief Security Officer. How do I say that, Bank?
It's a hospital.
Oh.
Froedtert, ThedaCare.
Yeah, hospital, sort of. Froedtert?
Froedtert,
ThedaCare Health. Okay, Chris, thank you for being one of our honorees, and thank you for sitting on the panel today. And I had permission to just say Dr. K, and it's our president and co-founder of WiCyS Utah, and you're a professor at SUU. So congratulations, and thank you so much for sitting on the panel. And I was lucky to also have Hayley McCormick, who is the Director of Cyber Fraud for United Airlines. So Hayley, thank you so much for sitting on the panel. And congratulations for all your hard work in the industry. And last but certainly not least is our keynote speaker, Derek Booth, from the U.S. Secret Service. He's going to moderate the panel, so a big round of applause for, I thought he was behind me, for Derek. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our panel, and for my virtual audience out there, you guys are welcome to, we haven't had any virtual questions today, so if you have any questions, put your questions in the chat box. We will make sure the panel gets your questions, and for you guys, you know the drill by now, just wait for the mic. So everyone, let's welcome our panelists.
Thank you, Kim. I've never been able to come back. Usually they run me out before lunch. So this is a treat for me, but we got a great panel. Let's just dive into this. So you guys met Chris Ducker, who's a Deputy CISO at Froedtert's ThedaCare Health, Hayley McCormick from United Airlines, and Dr. Shalini Kesar from Southern Utah University. I do want to point out that Chris, Shalini, and I all are graduates of Southern Utah University. Go Thunderbirds. Any others out there? I know there's at least one, two, three, couple. Awesome. Represent. There we go. So, all right, so let's dive into this. And I'm gonna sabotage this for a little bit here. I'm gonna start with Chris. Chris, is there anything in my conversation that stood out to you that you would like to either rebut or bring up and enhance and talk about?
Yeah, well, I'd like to talk a lot about the capabilities of the FBI that you so willingly threw under the bus. No. I think one of the things for me that I think is key in that as a deputy CISO is that safety valve that we always have with you and your partners of being able to help us in the event that our help desk gets socially engineered or things like that. And that has happened in previous gigs in my life, where a help desk was socially engineered, where money was transferred, and where we called some of your partners and quickly got that money back. So that's one of the things that it was a great takeaway from me from this and from other similar presentations from your brothers and sisters in the services. You really do have a friend there, and they're really, from what I've seen, nobody's going to embarrass you, nobody's going to laugh at you, maybe later after you're not around, but that's okay if they get your $1 million back, right? So give these guys a call quickly and see what they can do for you. Chances are they can save you from an even worse day.
Awesome. Shalini, anything to add?
I'm going to take a different perspective, but first of all, thank you, Kim and Future Events, for hosting this and inviting me as an academia. So I think the thing that stands out for me is that academia is mixing in with the industry to talk about the gap, what we talk about, and the gap is going to get bigger and bigger, and like what Chris said, right, we need to prepare the workforce to kind of have an idea what they're going to be prepared for, because they're not going to get that much time and space to prepare as much as in academia. So I think what stands out for me is I love that we have academia, industry, and different perspectives coming together and actually having a conversation. And I hope this continues.
Awesome. Hayley?
Well, so my background is actually in bank investigations for over 20 years. So someone who
worked BEC cases with the Secret Service for many, many years. It's another plug to say, reach out to your bank, reach out to the Secret Service. There's a really tried and true method of how to recover money. And if you're in a financial services industry or if your company is victimized by BEC, it's really important to make those connections so you reduce the financial loss.
Awesome. And I got jumped in this way too quick. I didn't get a chance to let these guys introduce themselves. So let's go back. Hayley, we'll start with you. Can you guys please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit more about you, and then maybe finish up with maybe another passion, something you feel passionate about that we can talk about as a group.
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Hayley McCormick. I am the Director of Cyber Fraud for United Airlines. My background, as I mentioned, is in banking and financial services, where I was managing fraud investigations for over 20 years. I'm actually from California. Don't boo yet. I came to Utah to work for Health Equity for a couple of years, right at the point of the mountain. So very, very happy to be here. And I guess for a passion, I actually am really passionate about cultivating things, gardening, creating things. So anything that gets me away from a screen for a while.
Oh, I should. Well, thank you so much, Derek. I think because we were talking before the panel, we got excited about this. So my name is Shalini Kesar, or Dr. K. I am a full professor in Southern Utah University. I'm also the director for the Masters of Cybersecurity program, which is 100% online, and it caters for both traditional and non-traditional students. And it's a fantastic opportunity. Of course, it's a master's in cyber, but the opportunity that I have is that the graduate students actually become my role models for my passion, which is creating a cyber pathway in the K-12. And my youngest student is 7 years old, and my oldest is 95. So there is lifelong learning for that in SU, and I love that. So that's why we have a lot of T-birds at the back. And the reason, I guess, is, again, bringing academia. And my biggest passion is two words: shared responsibility. So we've got to work together to bring that responsibility of how do we get what you want as industries ready before they panic and leave and retention becomes another problem.
And I'm Chris Stucker. I'm currently the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for Froedtert, ThedaCare Health, and it is a tongue twister. Say it with me: Froedtert, ThedaCare. You don't have to say it, really. Froedtert, ThedaCare. It's a fairly large healthcare system in the Midwest in Wisconsin. Before this, I've been in similar roles at a bunch of other healthcare places and consulting around. I started my life as a United States Marine, as an intelligence officer in the Army for a while, so that's kind of how I landed here, which is going to come back later for that whole passion thing, right? Why am I here? I love what I do. I love the part about being in the fight and being able to try and to protect people, which comes back to what's that other passion. When I was a young kid, I enlisted in the Marine Corps because of that same passion, right? It's this desire to feel like you're doing something and to have a job that you wake up in the morning and you feel like you're doing something that matters. So that's a big deal to me. Being able to work in a healthcare, particularly nonprofit healthcare, where you're pretty mission focused and where you're less focused on what the dollars are. Well, I say less focused because some of you have probably been in that environment and know that's not really completely true. But you get an unusual ability to focus on patient outcomes, and you get an unusual ability to focus on better healthcare, even if it doesn't necessarily result in better profits. So I love that part. The other passion that this brings me back to is this idea that I can help people understand things. And ever since I was a young kid, and the reason that I'm here now with Dr. K as well, I'm also an adjunct professor in Dr. K's program for that same reason, because I love the ability to explain things to people and to explain things to the future cyber warriors that are going to come out and replace me. And I love to see that light bulb moment for them. I love to see it when somebody hears something in a new way that they haven't heard before, and maybe they finally get it. And maybe they don't, maybe I strike out. But every once in a while, I'll pop a little lucky single and somebody will get something, and I love that feeling. So.
Awesome, thanks guys. And we are opening this up, I assume. We're gonna open this up to you guys too. If you have questions, please raise your hand. We've got microphones here, but if nobody has a question, we're going to dive into, Kim provided us some questions. Let's dive into the first one, and Dr. K, we'll start with you. Let's go, what lessons have you learned from recent incidents, and how have they reshaped your incident response planning and cyber resilience efforts? That's kind of a double. Let's just start with, what lessons have you learned from recent incidents, and how have they reshaped your incident response planning?
That's a great question, and we could be here all day for that. Many, many lessons learned. But I'm, again, answering from an academic perspective when you talk about incidents and things like that. So I want to take it at an umbrella level. So when we started our master's program about 4 years ago, we had 5 students. We have about over 150 students right now. So I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned working in academia and industry is that silo is not going to be the new thing. It is going to be collaborations, right? So I'm literally using the word incidents in the sense we had recruitment problems, we had retention problems, with the budget cut things are happening. So we have actually revamped our master's program by talking to industries like Chris and other members. There's a lot of T-birds here, and I was going to just say, raise your hands who are the T-birds here, and look around the room, right? Look, here we go. So we are revamping curriculum, so I don't want the curriculum to be a piece of paper that sits on the shelf and collects dust. It's got to have some practical capabilities. We're 100% online, but we've got students who are online, but we are seeing them. So I think one of the biggest lessons is collaboration, shared responsibility, and how do we bring in experts like Chris, and hopefully you, Derek, soon now he's a T-bird, and
Let's go.
so how do we bring all of us together that you actually become the role models for these students who are getting ready? So I'm using the word incidents in that sense, to bring the expertise. We don't need to recreate a wheel, right? We can just put them together and do it. So I love that fact that SUU and I have the opportunity to do that. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned personally is never be, I know we learned this from our parents, never be judgmental. I lived and grew up in London, England, moved to Cedar City for 6 months, opened up a map to see, oh, this is where Cedar City is. I'm going to be here for 6 months, and move to San Diego where my family is. 18 years and 1 month later, I'm still in Cedar City and I love it. So open up the doors, explore. You never know what's coming.
That's awesome. In the words of the wise Charles Barkley, I am not a role model. So, I think you are. Okay, sorry. All right. Chris or Hayley, you guys want to answer that one?
Sure, I'll jump in. I'll add to what Dr. K said. She has a particular focus that I kind of share, but coincidentally, I just read 34 incident response plans over the past 3 days because I just finished a course. It was one of, I saw a hand go up. I thought, was one of them yours? Okay, I thought maybe we had a student in here. So how have they affected me? And I've been in a couple of breaches now. One of the things that I've learned over the past few years is that the speed of operations has dramatically increased for lots of reasons, right? Many of you probably look at things like breakout times, and you know what breakout times typically were advertised as 5 years ago versus, like, I've seen a 19-minute breakout time 100% for sure, and I've seen under 1 minute breakout times that I'm pretty convinced happen. Not quite the data that I would like to have, but 19 minutes, 100% for sure, I've seen it. So that's fast. So when you talk about your incident response plans, I think one of the things that has to be that they have to be playbooks that are very easy to follow. If you have to go in and read long paragraphs to understand what you're supposed to do, that probably isn't going to work at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're fighting off a ransomware attack, right? So one of the things is the rehearsal of the plans. And this is kind of one of the things I go through with my students, and one of the reasons I stay around and teach is to share these kinds of lessons. And one of the things that I've seen happen a lot now is that people haven't adequately gone through the incident response plans and trained at all levels. You get a lot of people who have trained the SOC analysts, but you don't get that many who have trained the CEO. And if you haven't trained the CEO, and if you haven't trained this chief legal officer and the comms folks, they're going to be figuring it out at 3 o'clock in the morning. You don't want them to do that. So make sure that as you go through those, you've rehearsed every level of that. Go through that crawl, walk, run, just like you would if you were teaching people to do a manual skill somewhere, right? And make sure that the first time you do it with your senior leaders isn't in front of a bunch of people, because they're going to be embarrassed because they don't know what they're doing. So have one first, or at some point, take all your senior leaders off somewhere and educate them on what you need from them during an incident, right? Tell them what the team is going to look like. Tell them the kinds of things they're going to hear. Tell them what you're going to expect them to do in that incident, so that when it comes, it's rehearsed. They've done it a million times. The CEO says, got it, that's exactly what I was expecting to hear, and here's what you're expecting to hear in return, right? And he or she knows to turn to the legal officer and make those decisions, and the comms officer, when do we say what? So, you know, make them actionable 3 a.m. response plans, not things that, you know, somebody's going to be trying to read through 17 paragraphs of you know, a graduate paper that's an incident response plan. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Hayley?
I think the only thing I would add is having informed collaboration with your business partners is equally important. So you may understand how the application is supposed to behave, and your SIM is telling you that it's not behaving the way you expect it to. You need to understand what would happen if you take that application offline and how that's going to interrupt your business. As an airline, you can imagine, if anyone remembers July of last year, a little thing called CrowdStrike, big learning lesson for us as airlines, right? So we have to understand, both from a technical perspective and a business operations perspective, what anything that we do in the way of actions is going, what and how it's going to impact the business.
Thanks, Hayley. Anybody out there? Any questions? Yes, sir.
So this might not be a very popular question, but with AI advancing and everything, a lot of the people, my peers, are concerned that it's going to be replacing us as far as cybersecurity professionals. What are your thoughts on that?
No, as the short answer. I would say the way that we're looking at AI, and we have a whole responsible AI team from the perspective of governance, threat modeling, et cetera, there's always going to be a human element needed. And while AI can help with some of the operational functions and streamlining and perhaps making those more expedient, you're always going to need a human element in the decision-making process to evaluate what AI is spitting out to you.
Absolutely, it's not going to replace it. I think it will make some of the operational sides more effective and faster, but at the same time, we need a human element to validate it. I was just at a conference last week in Phoenix, and we talked about AI, and one of the panelists said, like, when you write policies, so just an example, right? I teach compliance policies, I do risk management. AI can create a policy in 5 seconds to 10 minutes. Some of the policies will be great, it'll give you a template, but 90% of the content will be absolutely false. So we have to have a human element to validate that, but yes, some operations can become quicker and effective, and why not use it? But the human has to still decide which part we should use and we shouldn't, and that's, I think, a training that AI, at least in my lifetime, is not going to take over that.
I would say I mostly agree with these guys. Most of you in this room are completely safe. You, sir, you're in trouble, though. I'm joking, obviously. No, I think these ladies are right, and I think, you know, there's a lot of opportunity, and just like lots of these other revolutions that have happened in our lifetimes, especially those of you who are a little bit of gray like me, there have been several of these things that everyone was scared of. Probably a lot of you remember when this whole internet thing kind of happened, and at first that was kind of scary, and there have been a lot of revolutions, right? And we're still here. So for me, I think the key is, how do you react to it, right? It's going to happen. That genie is not going back in the bottle. So now, do you hide from it and risk becoming obsolete? Or do you embrace it and learn more about it and say, hey, this is a phenomenal opportunity for me. We're at the ground floor of this AI thing, and I can take my time and become a leader in this field right now and dig into it and make it kind of some bread and butter for me, or I can run from it and hope for the best and take your pick.
That's awesome. Let's follow that up with another AI question here. Chris, maybe we'll start back with you. AI is transforming both defense and attack. How are you integrating AI responsibility into your cybersecurity programs without introducing new risks? And yeah, we'll start with that one. How are you integrating AI responsibility into your cybersecurity program without introducing new risks?
Yeah, I wish I felt confident that we're not introducing new risks. My team is mostly taking variations on the theme that I just mentioned, that we believe that we're better off if we understand and explore and learn how to work with a technology, no matter what that is, rather than if we kind of push it aside. So what we have done, as you know, it's hard to buy a tool that doesn't claim to be AI anymore. So if you look across our CMDB, and raise your hands if you have a complete CMDB, I know that's a joke. But what we do have, we have plenty of AI applications, and I think the question is, how do we put guardrails around those? And we've done the same kinds of things lots of organizations have done with trying to build guardrails around with the whack-a-mole variety of AI applications that show up every single day, right? And you're trying to block these notes app that people want to use. But I think, if you come back at the end of the day and say, what kind of business are we? We're a hospital. What's our focus in life? What's the business's goal? The business's goal is more accessible care, letting people live their unique best life, delivering precision care to people. What does that need? That needs advances in AI. It needs advances in quantum. It needs the precisely advances we're talking about. So I think we as security professionals have a responsibility to figure out how to accelerate those and do them as safely as possible. So on our team, that's kind of the approach we take. Yeah, there's a little bit of unknown out there. There's a little bit of scary out there, but avoiding it, to me, is more scary. So we're going to lean into it. Froedtert ThedaCare has established an AI governance committee that's headed by one of our VPs. She's also the chief data analytics officer, so she's very good with data. And then cyber is heavily involved with that, and as we go through it, and we try and learn it. We're trying to figure it out like everybody else. But when everybody else gets there, the one thing that I will guarantee is when everybody else starts to get there, we won't still be in the starting blocks. We'll be somewhere out on the course with them, as opposed to just kind of trying to hide from it.
You guys want to comment on that one?
My short answer is, I don't know. We don't know. As academics, we don't. So therefore, we hire professionals like Chris to come and show and talk to the students and give them an idea. At least, I think AI will have a lot of surprises, but at least they'll be aware of the surprises. And I think the younger generation needs to know that, because TikTok, Reels, videos, all that is fantastic, but there's such a high risk, and I don't think they know the risks. They're making them transparent in terms of loopholes, which the word transparency for the younger generation is very different than the transparency word we think of. Because they'll say, I don't care, it's okay, I don't care if they don't know where I'm going or what I'm eating, but they should. So I think that SWOT analysis is where industries members come in. And I'm not talking about college, I'm talking about K-12, because I think the younger generation already are hooked on it and it's part of their life. It's a necessity, it's not a privilege or a comfort. And that's scary to me in terms of risk. So we need to kind of really start low, because you see elementary kids having cell phones, smartphones, and they're just scrolling. They have no idea. So I think, again, comes back to shared responsibilities. But I don't know as a cybersecurity risk, so we hire experts like you to come and share and talk to them about it. It's important to increase their awareness. And probably it's a tip of the iceberg is what I want to say. It is a tip of the iceberg, like cybercrime was back in the day, right? So we are going to face some good, bad, and the ugly.
So let's stay with that, Dr. K. This question is going to tie into academia, but also the private world. The cybersecurity talent shortage is ongoing. How can we attract, retain, and upskill talent while also addressing burnout and team fatigue? So that's more for the private side, but let's go back to you. How can we attract people into the cyber world?
That's a great question. I'm going to try to summarize it, but that's my 18 years of work in Utah, so I'm going to do it in a couple of minutes. I think one of the biggest things is the lack of awareness. When we use the word cybersecurity, they think it's everything. And I'll get so many students say, oh, I can't do programming, or I'm not in GRC, or can I get into a dark room and start doing cyber ops or something. So I think the definition itself of cybersecurity is a very big umbrella term. So awareness, I think, is important. And at the same time, to increase that awareness, and I'm talking about Utah specifically, like I'm in southern Utah, 90% of my so-called client at K-12 is not only rural, but they're the first generation students who will probably go to college. And 80% of them are intergenerational poverty. That means in 2 generations, they haven't gone to college or have not had a full salary in their household. So there is a huge target which we are not tapping into. And it's so rewarding when my students or our team goes in and I'll talk to somebody, let's say in Penguich or Kanab or any other school, San Juan, right? And I'll tell the students, well, you can do this and you can be at home and the salary increases and you can take care of not only yourself but your parents also. There's a light bulb. Like, I can do that? I don't have any programming languages. I said, you don't need it. So the second, I think, is how can we, the burnout is that when you look at the K-12 educators, we don't have a cybersecurity module in high schools. How do you expect the youngsters to take cybersecurity in college when for 4 years they don't even know what it's all about? So educators get burnt out, and then I have teachers saying, oh, I'm not doing this, Dr. K. I already have 10 preps. Are you kidding? So what we are trying to do is educate we are educating the educators, no pun meant, but our graduate program students are doing this as a capstone and going back, so they get their 18. So what I call the 360 full circle. So my industry members are role models for grads. Grads are role models for undergrads. Undergrads are for high school for middle, and middle school for elementary. So after 18 years, we have that. So we need to work together on that. Because that burn, I think that fatigue is already happening. Unfortunately, COVID, I think, kind of took a big chunk of that. So I don't even remember 2019. I say before COVID or after COVID. So what's going to happen next is before AI and after AI. That's coming, or it's already here. So I think it's just, the bottom line is we've got to work together. And I know this conference is fantastic. Most of us will go back and we'll forget, and it'll be weeks and months. So I tell my students or myself, choose at least 5 people, connect with them and say, how can I help? Just 5 out of the 160 odd. And I think that creates a nice ripple effect and what I call a drop in the ocean. So we've got to work together.
That's awesome. Hayley or Chris?
I would say for United specifically, we tend to be very intentional about focusing on career pathways and not just career roles, job roles. So we are very focused on continuing education and training and professional development. We have multiple early career leadership development programs, internships, et cetera. We're out at the college campuses recruiting our talent acquisition teams. So the difference between creating a role and creating a pathway with cross-functional learning has made all the difference for us.
I think that covers it really well. I think having career paths, people are going to get burnt out anyway. Everyone in this room has too much work to do, right? And I think one of the challenges is it's a little frustrating for all of us to know that there are a bunch of people out there wanting cybersecurity jobs, and there are a bunch of you wishing that you had these people to do some of your menial work and to teach them and to prepare them to be the next generation. And it's hard to understand the disconnect with this surplus in supply and this surplus in demand. Why can't we match those up? And that's one it's frustrating to me too. And I hope that all of you will help me to do a better job of all of us welcoming potential candidates into the cybersecurity field a little more openly, a little more willing to train them, a little more willing to tolerate the fact that they're different than you are. Maybe they're younger, maybe they're a different generation, maybe they're just better looking. She's way better looking than I am, and so, you know, you've got all these things you've got to overcome. But if you want it to be better, you've got to welcome them in. I also think there is some opportunity in that AI conversation earlier to put yourself at the important point in the battle rather than at every point in the battle, right? And if you could, and I know nobody wants to lose their jobs to scare AI, but if you could hand off 4 hours of log watching to AI and only see that one event or those 5 events that lead to something interesting, would you do it? Oh, yeah. Yeah. So everybody, I do lots of automation work, and every time we give this lecture to people, I'm not going to automate away the parts you like of your job. That we need humans to do those, right? But I'm going to try and automate away all those things that you hate to do, right? Yeah. And that's the same thing as we use AI. AI has some potential to automate away a bunch of stuff that you hate to do, that you sit and watch for 4 hours and don't see anything. So, you know, look at the upside and the possibilities too.
That's awesome. Thanks, Chris. Anybody, any questions out there? Yes, sir.
So this is a question for Dr. Kesar. You mentioned earlier about, you know, K-12 children now having devices that they just scroll and endlessly and so forth, right? And earlier at lunch, we had a conversation where college students are now using AI to do some of their homework and whatnot to, you know, help them study and whatnot. So the question really is, what are you experiencing and seeing with the new workforce coming in? And the other thought behind that is, you know, this is the new generational way of working, if you will, is to use whatever is convenient at their fingertips to get their work done, whether it's studying or whatever the case, right? Shopping, whatever. And so instead of pushing back against it, we should find a way to channel that energy and help them be productive. So I want to know what the panel thinks and what you're seeing.
That's a great question. I'm going to try to remember your questions. So I think one of the things is you're absolutely right. The younger generation, like for me, a cell phone was a luxury because the first iPhone, I know some of you are going to raise your eyes, is that it's 2007, the tiny little iPhone on 14th August, it came up, right? It was the most coolest thing. It was a luxury. Now you talk to the kids, iPhone or any smartphone, that's part of their life, right? So you're absolutely right that I think we can't push back and say, no, get a notebook out, get a pencil or a pen. I'm not going to have you open up your notes on your phone. That's not going to work. If anything, it's going to push them away from this field and perhaps be a responsible citizen, so to speak. So you're absolutely right. So as an educator, I think about this, and I sometimes have sleepless nights thinking that, how do we do? So I think it's like crossing the bridge. We've got to meet halfway, right? Their tools and their platforms are different than what let's say in college was there, right? Very different. So I think working through that is, again, a responsibility. I'll give you an example. So one of my very dear friends works for Meta. And he is in his mid-40s. And when he got his team, they were all in their 20s. So he went there and he says, okay, let's have a meeting. They all took out their phones. And he said, hey, hang on a minute, where is your notebook? He goes, this is my notebook. And he says he just realized if I say put your phones away, they're not going to have a productive conversation. It's going to get sidetracked. So I think one of the things is a learning lesson is to look at the tools that they use, they get used to. We should do that. And I see that more and more in high school. When I go to high schools, they will open up their phones. Some of them won't even listen and they're texting or they're TikTok or whatever media they're watching because that's their way of coping with attention, anxiety, whatever they're going through. So I try to not shut them down, but try to understand why they're doing what they're doing. But I think the nutshell is they need to understand when and how they should use it. So the tone matters, not every time and all the time. Because if they get into cybersecurity, half of the jobs, we can't even take our phones in, right? So I think that academia needs to, and I strongly believe in it, is we need to rethink what we mean by education in academia, especially at I'm doing graduate level, so I'm just talking about the graduate, but I've taught at the undergrad. I teach at high school also as voluntary sometimes. So I think academia should rethink that. I use virtual reality in my classrooms. I use phones for my classroom. I use different kinds of platforms. I use Google Chat. I use Google Sticky Notes, whichever way it is. So the tools and the platforms have changed, and I think we need to keep that in mind. But you as industries can perhaps help us to say, okay, in our meetings, we use this particular tool. So I'll give you another example. We have something called Try Hack Me. One of my colleagues, he's a CISO, he said, have you tried Try Hack Me? And I said, what is that? He goes, it's a platform that is UK based, and why don't you use it so your online students can do it? So 2 years ago, we got the Try Hack Me platform. Now our students do hands-on online through Try Hack Me. So I think that little bit of adjustments and kind of meeting halfway so students don't feel like they're shut down, and at the same time, we are helping them to build their skills. Some students are fantastic with tools, but there has to be a policy. So the last thing I'm going to share is like what you talk about AI. I have a lot of students who use AI for homework. They get a 0 because they're using, but we've created a policy now that they can for ideas as long as they validate it and refer it. So in my compliance class, I actually have an assignment saying, go ahead, use AI, create a policy. The second step is validate how much of it is true or not. So they can themselves learn that, oh my gosh, this is not the real policy. I need to look through it. So I think academia's style is also changing, but we definitely at SUU recognize that. But academia is slow, it takes time, so it's not overnight. Does that answer your question?
We have some virtual questions that our back end would like to get to.
We got questions everywhere.
Everywhere.
Okay. He wants
So I have a question for Chris Stucker. As a deputy CISO, what KPIs or KRIs are your teams reporting on that you find valuable for C-suite and board reporting?
Yeah, great question. We have a slide deck that's intended specifically for, I guess, a couple of decks. One of them is for our IT Security Steering Committee, and we report a little more in there. When we talk to the board, it tends to be pretty focused on things that we believe the board would be interested in. So those are generally going to be business risks. And always the first question that we're going to get from the board is going to be, how much should I care about this? So we go in with 3 things that we kind of want them to know about. As a general rule, we want to stick to 3 things. And for each of those 3 things, we're going to kind of be ready to answer several questions that we believe that they might answer. So we're going to report on things like mean time to detect, mean time to recover. We're going to report on things that are in the news. So one of the columns that we have, one of the pages we have for both of those briefings talks about internal and external forces. So we're talking to the board about the things that we're seeing in the industry. This will feed into our education and awareness program, and this is how we kind of tie it all together and back to that ROI thing. So we're going to go through and we're going to say, in terms of external forces, the things we're seeing in the industry today, we might talk about, the prevalence of class action suits after a breach in healthcare, right? We might talk about the prevalence of phishing the help desk and trying to get past the help desk, social engineering, the change in the nature of attacks to an identity-based attack. And when we do each of those things, we'll try to match that in the other column with an internal force of something we're doing to help with that, right? So in some cases, we're implementing identity tools that are better off with UEBA focused at the identity level versus the machine level, right? So we can correlate what the user was doing with the machines and the IPs, the technical pieces that may have gone together. And a lot of times we're the first ones to figure things out using that human element, because you can start to think like a human, right? What happened in this space between where I can see signals? and then you have to, think like a human again. So you humans, you're probably all right there for another week or two. The other thing that we want to do when we talk through these things is we want to, our board likes to see how they compare with other industry leaders in academic medicine. Academic medicine's a fairly small community, and they want to try to evaluate our organization against the Clevelands and the Mayos and the Kaiser Permanentes. So we always have a few slides about that. We will always have slides on our response to incidents. So if all of you who are used to ITIL, I mean the ITIL version of incidents, we want to track our time to respond and whether we're hitting our SLAs on incidents. We talk about requests and other items internally, but to the board, just incidents. So those are kind of the big ones that we'll use with the board. With the steering committee, we'll also use things like our BitSite rating. We tell them that's essentially like a credit card scored that just gives them an idea that their team is doing something to improve their credit score, right? If our BitSite score is good, that's one measure of success. So those are some of the things we use.
Thanks, Chris. Do we want to, right there?
Sure. So I used to work for a DFIR company, and I've watched many grown adults cry when they realized their data was gone and they could not get it back. As you mentioned earlier, it's not if, it's when, and all of those numbers are going up, but people aren't reporting. So from a practical nature, knowing that at some point everyone will be breached, what are the top things you would recommend a business do to mitigate the damage or to recover from that quickly?
You want me to answer that? Go ahead, Hayley.
Practice for it, really, as simple as it sounds. I think Derek's slide earlier said backup, backup, backup. It's true. Plan for continuity and resiliency. Plan for the when, not the if.
So one of those slides I had talked about a ransomware attack on a municipality. They ended up buying, I think somebody went to Walmart and ended up buying like cricket phones just to get through the day because their cell phones had gone down too. And little things like that, like honestly, like having a tabletop, and I think maybe, I can't remember, it was the earlier presentation today. I think his name was Steve. He said, do a tabletop without AI on the table, like take it away completely. I think that's a good idea to go back to almost a barbaric caveman mentality a little bit. So if you are completely in the dark, what can you do? And I think it might be just as simple as writing out, just at least having a conversation. So when it does hit, as Chris said, so when it does hit, you don't look like the Keystone Cops running around the Three Stooges bumping into each other. You've at least thought it through. You might still be bumbling and stumbling in the dark, but at least you've got somewhat of a plan. So I think that's a good idea. Do it like a tabletop, like a kind of a barbaric one. Hey, let's pretend we're back in 1986 and, Billy Idol's on the radio and what happens, when Rebel Yell comes off and now we cry. So, yeah, sorry. That was my boy right there. So, did you guys want to comment on that one?
I think that's good. I mean, we've done digital darkness for exactly the reason and I think that's a fantastic exercise. And so to whoever it was that mentioned the business buy-in, the operations buy-in earlier, make sure you involve in them too, because probably, like in a hospital, the first thing that's going to really hurt isn't any of my stuff. It's whether you can find a pencil or a pen to start charting on paper again, right? And you've got people who think, well, yeah, we'll just print the forms and then wait a second, what are you going to print the forms on? Right? So it really is. It's an interesting exercise to take someone back to that level and make them rethink everything. You find out that you have, and I kid you not, there are physicians graduating from medical school who cannot read cursive. Promise you. Yeah.
We have another virtual question. This is from Parker Hannafin. And for Hayley McCormick specifically, how are you preparing users for the advanced social engineering attacks in 2025?
It's a very good question. I'm assuming the inference there is deep fakes and the like. We do a lot of training. You can imagine we're a global company, right? So our footprint and our attack surface for social engineering is quite large. So in addition to the technical capabilities that we have, we are constantly training our frontline whether they're a gate agent that you interact with when you're boarding a plane or a contact center representative that you're contacting by chat or voice. We're constantly training them for what to look out for with real life scenarios, and hopefully they're not our own personal scenarios, but things that you see in the news. We use those as real examples and create scenarios to test them as well.
We have another online, but we'll rotate here.
Sorry to hold everybody up, but this is for Derek. Earlier you talked, one of your slides included training, cybersecurity training. My question is, we've got all kinds of cybersecurity training. How do we make it effective? I heard from one presenter that enforcing is not the way to do it, influencing is better. How do we get through to our users so that they get it?
That's a great question. When you have the answer, let all of us know. So,
well, in your experience, you must have experienced some things that.
We just try to scare the crap out of them, 100%. I mean, literally, I think we literally, I try to do that in this kind of presentation as well. Throw the numbers at them, show them the damage that can be done, and then just try to paint that picture, maybe try to paint it a little darker than it needs to be, to say, hey, this is, it's not a matter of if, it's when, and when it happens, what are you going to do about it? What's your company going to do about it? You need to start talking about, losing your job, and look at the long term. What are some other things you could paint in that picture, and dial it down so it's specific for your organization. Whatever field you're in, whether you're healthcare or banking, financial institution, what picture can you paint for them, and then bring out real-time, find news articles and real-time experiences and real issues, and use that as say, hey, this is what happened here, and this is the after effects, and this is this all could have been avoided if we had done a couple of things. So. I don't know. Outside of that, I think that's one of the $1 million questions out there is how do we buy in our users, and then as Chris said earlier, how do we buy in our C-suites, our CISOs and our CEOs, and get the money dedicated to us that we need. That's the other challenge. So it's a big challenge. So
I'd also just throw in seek first to understand, right? Figure out what the data is telling you. Figure out who is failing. Is it predictable? Is it repeatable? It's predictable and repeatable for me. 80% of the time it's going to be nurses. Why is that? One, 80% of our employees are nurses. But the other is nurses become nurses because they want to be out on the floor treating patients. So if you want to get buy-in from a nurse, you have to be able to relate it to what he or she is doing and what he or she is thinking, right? You have to say, whoever you are, the nurse, Derek the nurse, I get what you're doing. Maybe I walk around with him. We round in our hospitals, right? So we see what people are doing. I can see how Derek the nurse does his job. I can look for efficiency possibilities. How does he work with Epic, right? How does he work with all of the systems that are in the hospital? How does his Imprivata badge work or not work for him? We have lots of opportunities there. That also convinces Derek, or has the tendency to convince Derek, that I've spent a little bit of time with him and I care about what he's doing, and maybe even that I care about his patients too. And it gives you an opportunity then to live Derek's life a little bit and say, how can I enable you to be more successful? Why is it, Derek, that we're having a little bit of trouble with these? Is it that you don't understand? With nurses, it's not. They're smart, right? It's that they're busy. Nurses are out on the floor giving shots and taking vitals and doing all of those things that nurses want to be doing. And when they get to their email, it's a chore for most of them. So they rush through it quickly. So now you have an approach, right? Now you have an idea of how can I help these nurses do a little bit better at this? And there are lots of ways you can approach that if you understand the nature of the problem, right? And one of the things we do at Froedtert ThedaCare is every new leader that comes in, one of us, either me or the CISO or one of my managers, directors, will greet all those new leaders and explain why we have these programs. And we always try to relate it to patient care, right? All of us here at Froedtert ThedaCare are here to contribute to giving better care for our patients and protecting their privacy, protecting their health. You don't let Derek the nurse get away with not washing his hands when he treats patients, right? It's a safety concern. Well, this is a safety concern too, right? So you got to, think about your business, think about the people who are having trouble, and bring it back to them. And how can I help you be more successful?
And I wanted to add to that, if I may, and I think Chris said it, Chris mentioned when he's talking about this, to me it's like a mentorship program. So I think that's also important in businesses, to have a mentorship program where you're showing them and you're explaining why this is important, whether you call it training or mentorship. And I think that helps in retention, because then you see cybersecurity, people are coming and going and changing jobs. That's another burnt out, because people are turning around, coming, losing the job, or changing a job because a salary is higher or whatever. So I think creating that mentorship program which has training to explain why you do what you do and why is it important. And like Derek said, show them the reality. It's scary. And I want to add something else to that, is that what Chris had mentioned also is when you have mentorship programs like nurses, make a collegial environment that encourages females to be in that field and retain in that field. Because if they don't see mentors and allies and advocacy, it's going to be very hard to retain it. So I think there's two undercurrents when, especially with all allyship, there's two undercurrents coming there, because when females are coming into the jobs, which is predominantly, oops, I shouldn't be saying that in Utah, but I'm going to, but predominantly male-dominated field, and you have these females coming, you need to have a mentorship program to not only show them what they need to do, but also how we can support that and create retention. And I think there's a lot of different layers of that, right? Whether you call it training or mentorship. And I think that's a key point sometimes we're missing. When budget cut happens, training and mentorship is cut mostly because we don't have the finances. But I think that's understated.
Got another virtual. This is for Dr. Kesar. How do you keep curriculum current when cybersecurity threats, technology, et cetera, are constantly evolving?
I'm here. That's why I think being part of the industry conferences, for me personally, I'm a researcher. I publish quite extensively internationally, and I collaborate with people to write papers, and not only come to events like this, but I bring my students also, so they get an idea from an idea, and then we continue. So I think, again, being in that field where the conversations are happening, practically try to be there and continue. We'll always play catch up. It will always play. But at least we need to know what's out there so that we can be part of it. The surprises can be slightly minimum, but they won't get a job otherwise. If they don't know what AI is and what deep fakes is, they won't get a job. They won't have a second interview, let alone a second question in the first interview. So I think just research, reading, and disseminating the information is very critical.
Thanks, Dr. K. As Alan Jackson says, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, and that somewhere is here. So let's wrap this up. We want to thank everybody for participating. Maybe give everybody one last chance if you want to say something. If not, maybe what emerging threat do you see in the next 3 to 5 years that will reshape cybersecurity? And maybe we end with that.
I'll start with what makes me lose sleep at night is a convergence of cyber and physical security issues. So as AI is used more and more and drone attacks become more and more frequent, one of our core values at United Airlines, of course, is safety. So we are on the cusp of and really dedicated to converging both our physical security programs and our cybersecurity programs.
Thanks, Hayley.
I think that's great. I think of physical security and emotional intelligence. I think that's going to be a different field altogether and physical security is going to be huge, I think.
I still think it's people. It's, at the end of the day, we're not autonomous yet. Skynet's not going to do it on its own yet. So I still worry about what people are thinking. What's the person going to do? And there are flawed people who are going to take whatever tool they have, whether it's AI or quantum or whatever we're not talking about quite yet, And as soon as we start to talk about it, somebody's already using it for, you know, whatever the purposes are, good or bad. So it'll always be people for me. And the answer is people. You know, you train humans to think like humans, to think a step ahead, you know, and then you know, you train them to be empowered, you train them to be proactive and a little reactive, because you're never always going to be right in advance, right? So, yeah, it's people on both sides.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Dr. K. Thanks, Haley. Thank you, Kim. Mike? I don't know what to do. Say thank you. Thanks, everybody. Make sure you tip your waiters and waitresses. I guess we're done. That's all I have to say about that. I mean, I started with Forrest Gump. We're going to end with Forrest Gump. Oh, stand by. Here they come.